Hi guys, welcome back to Mental Masterpiece. My name is Frank Blackman Jr. I am a senior at U of D Jesuit, and today I'm joined by a mayoral candidate for the city of Detroit, Anthony Adams. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm fine, Frank. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good.
Great.
Some of the questions that I'm going to ask you is based around, youth mental health and, kind of your plans for addressing this issue, a
All
major
right.
issue that is going on not only in the city of Detroit, but the world right now. Especially with COVID and everything. So, my first question to you is, mental health is obviously an important topic right now, especially during COVID. So, how have you found ways in your personal life to maintain, balance?
But I think the first and foremost, you have to really do a couple of things. One, you have to maintain sort of a healthy lifestyle. You got to get out, you got to exercise. During COVID, I was able to do a tremendous amount of bike riding. I actually went and bought me a bike and would find myself riding 20, 30 miles a day just to, keep healthy. Obviously, drinking plenty of water, reading a lot of books, reading a lot of interesting things, things that were necessarily law related because I'm a lawyer, but sort of fiction, nonfiction things to keep the mind active, and just really trying to maintain a sense of balance in my life. Being isolated for such a long period of time, really not being able to communicate and contact with people certainly had its downsides, but obviously through Zoom calls or through virtual drive-bys, a lot of things where you're able to continue to stay connected are things that I was able to do.
For sure, that's some great tips to give people. So, my follow-up question to that is, we're on the brink of a very historic, I guess you can say, mayoral candidate race between you and you and I won't say other names, but you're on the brink of a very historic race right now, and so it's a lot of pressures and anxieties that come along with that. So I know you're mentioning some of the things that you do, but like on a day-to-day, balancing your job as an attorney and your job as running for mayor, like how do you make sure that it all stays in one place?
So I think, first and foremost, you have to make sure that you get sleep.
Hmm.
Sleep is probably, critically important because you got to maintain a high level of mental alertness. You've got to have your schedule in order. And obviously, I'm running for mayor. I have a person who manages my schedule for me, so it kind of keeps me from tripping over myself. You've also got to, again, eat healthy. You've got to drink plenty of water. And you've got to exercise. So you try to do all the things that you normally do in your life in order to keep yourself balanced, understanding that the stresses of the campaign clearly require you to increase obviously your physical activity in order to combat the physical effects of stress as well as the mental effects of stress as well.
For sure. So as you progress, you're say you get elected mayor, you're representing 80% Black population. And,
Mhm.
it's a stigma behind Black people in mental health that we don't seek treatment, we don't get the help necessary for our mental health. So what are your plans to kind of get people more involved and
Right.
with mental health?
So part of it obviously is the whole Detroit Wayne Integrated Health Network much more accountable. They are the largest funded provider for mental health services in the city. I think 60 or 70% of the actual population resides in the city. And so I've got to make sure that they actually have the right programming in place. I think they also have to work in concert with our public school system through DPS, making sure that the network of counselors, intervention specialists are available, medical doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists are available to provide actual outreach services. I also plan on being much more of a spokesman for mental health services. Having had a daughter who committed suicide, I know well the pain that causes. And I think that we've got to begin to put faces on our pain so that we can work through our anger and our frustration to provide hope and a vehicle for other people to understand the types of services and things that are available in order to assist young people.
Great. Yeah. So you talked about DPS a little bit, and that was kind of my next question is, DPS has been struggling a lot. We've been seeing a lot of news stories about, teachers not wanting to teach, students not wanting to come to school every day. So,
Right.
um, you know, as I look at the mental health programs on their websites and things of that nature, like they don't have many resources. So talk about like how you plan on integrating more resources and mental health resources into DPS.
Well, I certainly have to be a champion for the provision of the services in our schools. And it's not only just the DPS system, but we also have a large charter school system as well. I mean, the fact that there is a declaration that violence is a public health menace, and a lot of our young people live in very stressful and difficult environments, certainly gives me cachet to really push the envelope on what are we doing in order to address these types of issues. If we aren't very proactive at talking about the mental health issues, trying to reduce and eliminate the stigma associated with mental health services, then I think we failed as a community and we failed in our young people because they clearly need the help and assistance to work through a lot of issues. When I was growing up in the good old days, we didn't have the same pressures. There wasn't social media, there wasn't Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, all these things. And young people today are just bombarded with so much information that we've got to make sure that they understand how to work through their issues, their angers, their frustrations, and knowing that seeking assistance is not something that you can't do, that you need to do.
100%. So let's talk about a little bit more a wider range with the state of Michigan. Like, as the state of Michigan suicide rates continue to increase for teens, do you think the state of Michigan is being a lot more passive on this issue, or do you think there's some room for improvement when it comes to mental health amongst teens?
I mean, there's always going to be room for improvement. Whenever you look at suicide rates and you see upward spikes in that, clearly we need to do a much more. And I think, the emphasis on kind of the cyberbullying, bully aspect of suicide, but also the mental health aspect of making sure that our young people have the services that they need. Early identification is certainly a key on what we need to do in order to have a robust plan of action. But we also have to have the healthcare professionals, the mental health professionals, the social workers, the intervention specialists in place so that we can provide the service. I think we've also got to be much more intentional on how we become proactive in what we do. Once we kind of identify a problem issue here, a problem family, then why are we not sending people out to sort of intervene with the family to talk about what their needs are? How do we help the family heal and get the services that they need in order to function in a society?
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, I've had conversations with some of the people at DWIN, and I understand kind of where they're coming from as far as not having the, funding and resources and all that, how it plays a factor. But I want to ask you, in those conversations, they talked a lot about how they don't have a lot of programs focusing on Black males and how to get them to seek therapy. So say if you were to ask to create a program for Black men specifically, what would that look like?
I think, part of it is got to be administered by people with whom young men in the community trust. If I'm trying to design a program, I'm first trying to figure out who has access to the young men, what's their connection with the community, how can we integrate the services over a period of time so that we kind of break down the stigma of mental health services and being open to receiving service. And part of that is it's got to come from people in the community that are respected, people with whom they trust, people with whom they have a bond. And once we establish the bond and connection that these services are available and that people should take advantage of them, then how am I moving you towards a path of healing your mental healing and healthness? That's very, very important.
Yeah, 100%. So going back a little bit to DPS and just, I guess, schools in general, we talked a little bit about how, we try to get programs into the schools, but, it's a lot going on right now in the city and the world. So what could the city of Detroit do right now that you think to help provide students and parents and teachers and counselors and anybody with the proper resources?
Well, I think that people understanding that mental health is a vital, important part of our holistic approach to medicine. Whether it's getting ourselves physically healthy, whether it's getting ourselves socially healthy, whether it's getting ourselves mentally healthy, all these components play a very important part. And I think I, as a mayor, have to really begin to advocate an awareness of these services, how people can take advantage of them, if in fact people seek out the services to make sure that the resources are available, as I said earlier, Detroit Way Integrated Health Work is actually the largest provider of healthcare services. I think their budget is something like $800 million.
Yeah,
I can't necessarily believe that it's a resource issue. It might be a resource allocation issue, and that's something that we probably need to look at to ensure that we're spending more dollars on direct service and less dollars on administrative overhead and costs.
100%. Yeah, I agree. So my last and final question to you is, how does funding play a role? I know you just talked about it a little bit, how they have the largest endowment of any resource program in the state. How does funding play a role in making sure that schools have the proper necessary resources?
Well, I think we've got to make sure that we both understand the connection of how different agencies work in a holistic approach.
Mhm.
It doesn't help me if there's no level of communication between Detroit Wayne Integrated Network and Detroit Public Schools. There should be a high level of communication, but there also is a dedicated need through the Department of Health, the public health service aspect of it, to ensure that we're putting and utilizing our grant funding, our grant money, and grant dollars to go out and provide information and access to information for people in the community. We also have to fund positions of people who can go out and do this work. This work is just as important as someone policing the community. I think if we understand the holistic approach to how we deal with issues, it gives us a much better opportunity to resolve problems.
Well, I want to thank you for joining us today, Mr. Adams. Good luck this November, and I hope good things are to come for you.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
I appreciate you having me on as a guest.